Hello and welcome back to another Premier League predictions video. Yes, this is the video series that I do every week, attempting to predict how I think the coming Premier League game week will go. Currently on game week 7, but before I take a look at my game week 7 predictions, we're going to do what I normally do and take a look back at how I did in game week 6, see if I got any predictions correct, or if I didn't, and it's most likely the latter. But without further ado, we're just going to jump into it. I'm going to start with the Saturday fixtures and Manchester City versus Nottingham Forest. Now I predicted 4-1 to City. It was actually 2-0 to City, and the game was honestly won by the 14th minute, but it was not an easy game for City. Rodri saw red in the 46th minute for assaulting Morgan Gibbs-White, and from then on, Forest really took the game to City. I honestly thought we controlled it for a good portion of that second half, but unfortunately we weren't clinical enough to score a goal to really make it tight, but we looked very solid in that second half, and a lot of positives can be taken from that performance. Obviously, did he go down to 10 men, but we still performed very admirably. You know, forcing City back to defend, like not many teams have done that to them, so that's a dub in my eyes. And then move on to Crystal Palace versus Fulham, and I predicted 2-0 to Palace. It was actually 0-0, a bit of a ball draw. Fulham were the dominant side throughout, but John Stone was there to keep Palace in the match and earn them a very, very important point in their own gaff. Well, it could turn out to be an important point. Palace did have their fair share of chances, to be fair, but Fulham honestly looked like the better side on the day, and it was also very funny seeing Hughes get clattered as well. And then move on to Luton Town versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. I predicted 1-0, and it was 1-0. We smashed it, lads. We got a Luton prediction correct. What a dub. Luton grabbed their first point of the season in quite controversial manner, to be honest. I did say Luton's next goal would come at home, and I was correct. But Luton made it hard for themselves, I'm not going to lie. Wolves had a player sent off in the 39th minute, but that didn't stop them from going ahead. Luton, though, they clawed it back, and it was through a penalty that they finally managed to get their first point on the board. And of course, Morris was the one that scored as well. Not the best of performances from Luton, I'm not going to lie. They did go behind when the opposition were down to 10 men, but they fought back. They showed some resolution, I guess you could say. And they claimed a point, which is very, very important. And then move on to Brentford versus Everton. Now I predicted 3-0 to Brentford. It was actually 3-1 to Everton. Excuse me? Everton shocked everyone here as they grabbed their first win of the season against Brentford. The Bees came back from behind to equalise, but the Toffees responded well and scored 2 goals unanswered. Not only did DCL play football, but he also scored as well. Crazy, crazy times, man. But honestly, I did not have Everton, of all teams, beating Brentford this season. That is insane. Fair play to Everton, man. I mean, they deserve the 3 points, but crazy. Also, fuck you, Tarkowski. I subbed you on my FPL and you scored. What are you playing at? Come on, man. We move on to Bournemouth versus Manchester United. I predicted 2-1 to United, and it's actually just 1-0. Burnley are still searching for their first win, as Evans started for Manchester United in 2023. Though I say that, he was big for United this week. Not only did he have a goal chalked off for offside, but he set up Fernandes for the winner as well. So he was arguably a very important player for them in this match, which is very crazy to say, but also just shows the dire straits Manchester United are in at the moment. Burnley weren't dominated, but they just weren't clinical enough, as they had plenty of chances but just couldn't find the back of the net. And against Onana, that's impressive. And then move on to the Sunday fixtures, and we start off with Chelsea versus Aston Villa. I predicted 3-1 to Villa, and it's actually just 1-0. Chelsea's woes continue as they lose yet another Premier League match. Chelsea did test Martinez quite a bit, but he was just too hard to beat. And then, to make things worse for Chelsea, they went down to 10 men. And then, Watkins finally broke his duck with a wonderful, wonderful strike. Just as I saw them on FPL. These players, man, they love playing with my emotions. But yeah, Watkins has finally opened his account, and if last season is anything to go by, he's going to start scoring a lot more goals now. And then we move on to Arsenal versus Tottenham, the North London derby. I predicted a 3-2 win for Arsenal. It was actually a 2-2 draw. What a North London derby that was. Arsenal started brightly, but it was an own goal that actually gave them the lead before Son was there to equalise. Saka then put the hosts ahead once again before Son once again equalised. Ange has really turned around this Spurs side, but Arsenal are lacking a clinical striker. If they had one at their disposal, I'm sure they would have scored probably 2 or 3 more goals. But Vicario in net was brilliant for Tottenham, and honestly, it's just a great match from a neutral perspective. Brennan Johnson also almost scored as well, so fair play to the kid. And then move on to Liverpool versus West Ham United. Now I predicted 2-1 to Liverpool. It was actually 3-1. West Ham started brightly, attacking from the off, but Salah opened the scoring from the spot. Bowen responded though as West Ham grabbed an equaliser before the second half. The Hammers kept trying, but it was Núñez in the 60th minute who put the hosts ahead before Jota really finished things off and topped it all off with a FIFA celebration. What is this guy playing at? And then move on to Brighton Hove Albion versus Bournemouth. I predicted 3-0 to Brighton. It was actually 3-1. Bournemouth capitalised on the keeper being too comfortable on the ball as Solanke opened the scoring. Crazy error to make. Brighton responded though in the dying embers of the first half through a deflection from Billy Gilmour. What a ball-in that was, to be fair. Brighton then attacked from the off as Matone put the hosts ahead right as they kicked off, before adding a second to truly put that European loss behind them. Matone was honestly immense in this match. Really dug Brighton out of a hole they got themselves in, to be honest. What was the keeper playing at? He's far too comfortable on the ball. And then move on, finally, to Sheffield United versus Newcastle. I predicted 2-0 to Newcastle. It's actually 8-0. Sheffield United fans must hate themselves right now. Thank you. I'll be here all week. It was an absolute demolition at Bramall Lane as 8 different goal scorers put the blades to the sword. What a performance that was from Newcastle though, as they looked unstoppable. Does Heckingbottom have long left as they find themselves Heckingbottom of the league? I'm just jokes about Sheffield United. They just come so easily. I've heard like Chris Wilder being floated about, so either way, it's not looking good for Sheffield United. I'll say that much. So yeah, those were my Game Week 6 predictions. I'm continuing my streak of just getting one correct, so I mean, we'll take it. Time to get into what I think you're mostly here for, and that'll be my Game Week 7 predictions. Obviously, my ball knowledge is insane, so you come here for the correct predictions. And we're going to start off with this Saturday fixtures and Aston Villa versus Brighton. The Villains host Brighton at Villa Park. Who would have guessed? Both sides have been enjoying successful starts to their seasons. Brighton find themselves in 3rd, whilst Villa sit in 6th. Both teams have been enjoying exceptional runs of form, and both teams just seem like they can't stop scoring. Both teams are also playing European football this season, and while they have been experiencing different fortunes so far, that's not affected league performances from what I can tell. Villa grabbed a win at Stamford Bridge last week and held strong, keeping a clean sheet, whilst Brighton dominated Bournemouth but just could not keep a clean sheet. And that seems to be a theme for Brighton, as they failed to keep a clean sheet in each of their Premier League matches this season. And I don't see that stopping anytime soon. I'm going to say a 2-2 draw. I can see these two sides sharing the points in Birmingham. As I said, they're both very impressive teams who love to play some attacking football. It looks brilliant in full flow. I think Brighton's inability to keep a clean sheet will cost them once again, but I do think their goal scoring prowess will dig them out of the hole. Villa have a better defensive record than their opponent and have been prolific in front of net as well. Emery and De Zerbi have gotten these teams to play some wonderful football, so I expect it to be a good clash to watch. But I do ultimately see the points being shared in Birmingham. But it could go either way, to be honest. And then we move on to Manchester United versus Crystal Palace. And this is where I think it is pertinent for me to say that I'm not taking Carabao Cup results into account for this video. I know Manchester United and Crystal Palace will play each other in the Carabao Cup, and that match will have definitely happened before you see this video, but those results will have no bearing on my predictions. Okay, hopefully that clears that up. The Red Devils host Crystal Palace at Old Trafford, as both sides find themselves next to each other in the table. Manchester United haven't enjoyed a brilliant start to the season and currently find themselves in 9th. Crystal Palace have similarly not had the greatest start to the season, but there's a lot less pressure on them than at Manchester United, so the outrage isn't as big surrounding that, and I think it's honestly expected of Palace, to be honest. Both teams are suffering from their fair share of injuries too, but United are undoubtedly suffering more, and are also without Sancho as well, although that is through choice. Both sides have lost 2 league matches, but with United, they've won 3, whereas Palace have only won 1. You know, I think it'll be a decent match. I'm going to say 2-1 to United. United should win this match, to be honest. Despite the injuries and suspensions currently affecting the squad, I do think Manchester United are the better side, but I can see Palace causing them some issues as well. The injuries do make it interesting in regards to what side Ten Hag chooses to put out. I do imagine it'll be a similar side to the one that faced Burnley, and we saw how Burnley cut through their backline numerous times. So I can see Palace causing United a lot of similar issues, and they'll make the game tough for them, there's no doubt about that. Palace's main issue though seems to be scoring goals, as it was last season. The goals aren't flowing, and I can't see this match at Old Trafford changing that at all. I think the hosts will get another win under their belt, but I reckon Palace will make it a tough match for them. They won't make it a cruise job. They'll make it tough, and they'll threaten United's goal as well. Like, they've got some goal scoring in their midst, they just can't seem to find the back of the net. So it'll be interesting to see how that one turns out. And then we move on to Newcastle versus Burnley. Newcastle United host the Clarets at St James's Park. This is a Newcastle United side that destroyed Burnley's fellow promoted side Sheffield United the week prior. And that was in their own backyard as well. That was an 8-0 domination, and Burnley, honestly, don't look much better than the Blades. Burnley have yet to grab themselves a win this season, only earning the 1 point so far. They gave good accounting of themselves in that draw and performed well in their slim defeat to United as well. But unfortunately for Burnley, this is Newcastle side that's on a rampage. They completely dominated last week, and while Burnley, look better than the Sheffield United defence, this is at St James's Park, which will make it a lot tougher for Burnley, and honestly could be another domination if we're not careful. Both sides are nursing injuries, with the Magpies looking better off on that front too though. I'm going to say 4-0. I don't think Newcastle will win us in such an emphatic fashion as they did last week, but I do still see them cruising to another 3 points. Newcastle have seemingly turned around their fortunes after getting 2 wins on the bounce, and while it's a small sample size, things are looking positive for the Magpies. As mentioned, Burnley are yet to grab their first win of the season and are currently in hot pursuit of those elusive 3 points. And unfortunately for the Lancashire side, I can't see them grabbing a win here. It would be seen as a massive upset, but with the form and the squad Newcastle have, I really cannot see that happening. I mean, all power to Burnley if they do grab a result against Newcastle, but it just looks very unlikely. This is a very strong Newcastle side, so yeah, good luck Burnley is all I can say. And then we move on to Wolves versus Manchester City, and we've got the Mateus Nunes derby as Wolves host Manchester City at the Molineux. Wolves have not gone off to the best of starts this season, with only a win and a draw to their name. Manchester City, on the other hand, are the only side that are still unbeaten in the league and are on course to break the previous perfect opening match record of 9 matches without dropping a single point. Manchester City signed Nunes on deadline day, and he's performed well in his appearances so far, chipping in with an assist as well. Manchester City will be without Rodri though, after his red card against Nottingham Forest, so it's opened the door for Calvin Phillips to make his first Premier League start this season. So it's going to be very interesting to see how he performs for the Citizens, because he is a good player. We saw when he got called up for England, he performed well as well, so I'm sure he'll do well for City as well. I mean, we've seen him off the bench, he looks good, so nothing really too alarming for City fans. Wolves also without a player though, through a red. But Bellegarde was not a nailed-on starter for Wolves, so it's not as big of a loss as Rodri is for City. I'm going to say 3-0. I see City continuing their perfect run in the West Midlands. City are experiencing quite a few injuries at the moment, as I mentioned, but has not stopped their run of form, and I doubt Wolves will be the ones to change that either. One of Wolves' biggest issues, like with Palace, is scoring goals, and I don't think they'll be able to get past City, to be honest. They're a very solid defensive line. City have kept a clean sheet in 3 Premier League matches, but I still can't see Wolves scoring past them. They don't have a prolific goal scorer in their squad. I mean, Hee-chan is currently their top scorer with 3 goals for his name this season, but I don't think he'll be able to get past the City defence either. Honestly, I think Wolves' biggest issue against the City side is breaking them down, and I just don't think they'll be able to do that. So I can see the visitors coming away with all 3 points, but it's City, like, it's pretty much expected if you're a team out of the top 6 to lose to City, even in the top 6, to be fair. But yeah, it's wraps for Wolves. It's City, what can you do? And then move on to Bournemouth versus Arsenal. The Cherries host an unbeaten Arsenal side, whilst they are still looking for their first win of the season. Both sides have had very different starts to the season, with Arsenal finding themselves in 5th without a loss to their name, whilst Bournemouth are currently 17th without a win to their name. Both sides are nursing quite a few injuries at the moment as well, with Arsenal possibly missing out on some of their best players in Saka, Rice and Martinelli. This will make the Bournemouth clash a tough one for Arsenal, as a majority of their injuries are not to first team players, so should be able to give Arsenal a proper challenge. I can also see a 1-1. I can see it being another draw for Bournemouth and another draw for Arsenal. Whilst I do see the Cherries making it tough for this possibly weakened Arsenal side, the Gunners do still have a raft of quality within their squad, so they should be able to secure a draw at the very least. It'll be very interesting to see how Arsenal perform without some of their best or more important players. I mean, Saka especially has been ever present for Arsenal and has been an integral part of Arteta's squads and their play style. Now, they do have Reece Nelson in the squad, who is a good player, but I don't think it's arguable that he's on the same level that Saka is, because he's just not. Bournemouth will make this a tough clash for the Gunners, and I can see the points being shared on the coast, to be fair. More power to Bournemouth if they can get a draw, or even scrape a win, because it will be a weakened Arsenal side, but you've got to play with the hands that have been dealt. So if Bournemouth should go for it, I reckon. Play the brand of football Areola wants to play, and maybe they'll get a result. I would enjoy that. I can't lie. Then move on to West Ham versus Sheffield United. The Hammers host the Blades at the London Stadium. Now both teams are coming off the back of consecutive losses, with one side's losses being worse than the other. Guess who? West Ham have lost against two of the most informed teams, as have Sheffield United, but it was the nature of their most recent defeat that really separates the two sides. West Ham got off to a good start this season, putting out some brilliant performances, and will be looking to curtail those losses as soon as possible and get back to winning ways. The same can't really be said for Sheffield United, as they haven't won a match yet, and I can't see this being the game that changes that, to be honest. It's going to be a very tough match for Sheffield United. I'm going to say 3-0 to West Ham. While I don't want to discount Sheffield United, it's hard not to at this point, especially after recent performances as well. That's not to mention the large amount of injuries they're currently struggling with. West Ham have shown the level of performances they can put out, both domestically and in Europe, and with those new signings who've been cooking, it's not looking good for the Blades. Honestly, 3-0 could be a conservative estimate, and my real sticking point is the mentality that Heckingbottom showed in those post-match interviews just underlines that it's a very tough period for the club, and with the mentality that you're expected to concede 8 goals, that's not going to help the squad. So this match could easily be more than 3. I do kind of hope for the squad's sake that it's not, but that might kick the board into action and getting rid of Heckingbottom, who knows. But yeah, I'm going to say 3-0, but it could easily be more than 3, let's be real. And then move on to Everton versus Luton Town. Now this is another possible relegation 6-pointer, 6 games in. I do say possible though, as Everton did grab their first win of the season last week, whereas Luton are still searching for their first win of the season. They did finally get a point on the board though, so there is that, silver linings and all that. Everton haven't got off to the best starts this season though, but that win against Brentford will have filled the squad with a lot of confidence, and Luton at Goodison is the perfect opportunity to kick on and get another 3 points on the board. At Kenilworth Road, Luton always have the opportunity to grab a point, but away from home, they don't seem to possess any of that ability. Now, of course, teams will play better at home, but I think at Kenilworth Road, that is amplified for Luton. They don't look good when they're away from home, and Goodison can especially be a tough place to go. But with the atmosphere surrounding Everton, this might not be as tough as it could be. Remains to be seen, but I'm going to say 2-0 to Everton nonetheless. I do think this should be another win for the Toffees. Luton have not shown the quality needed to grab an away win this season, much like Forest last season, and I can't really see that changing at Goodison. Everton aren't a great side themselves, but that performance they put in against Brentford has shown some of the quality this side possesses, and I reckon we'll see a bit more of that in this game against Luton. Luton can never seem to claw back a game once they go down away from home, and while they did barely manage against Wolves, that was at home. Everton have the ability to beat Luton, not necessarily dominate them, but I do think it should be a fairly easy win for the Toffees. I'm not sure what threat Luton could offer them, to be honest. So yeah, it should be a fairly routine match for Everton, but as we know, they're Everton, so they're probably going to lose somehow. And then we move on to Tottenham versus Liverpool. It's a big clash as 4th place Tottenham hosts 2nd place Liverpool. Both sides have not lost a match so far this season and have been performing exceptionally well. Liverpool have not dropped points since their 3-1 win over Bournemouth in the second game of the season, and it was the start of a very impressive run from Klopp's men, especially after last season. Spurs have drawn 2 of their matches, 1 more than Liverpool, but for a manager who's never managed in the Prem with a largely new squad playing a new style of football, that's very impressive, I think. Liverpool have conceded in most of their matches this season, only keeping 1 clean sheet, whereas Spurs have managed to keep 2. Tottenham are also suffering quite a bit from a few injuries at the moment, with some of their biggest players currently sidelined, which is never what you want to hear, whereas Liverpool don't look too bad on the injury front. But I'm going to say a 2-2 draw. I think it'll be another draw for Spurs, to be honest. I do see Tottenham being the side to stop this winning run Liverpool have been on. They're a very tough side to play this season and play an attractive brand of attacking football. Liverpool's defence has not been solid this season, and while they haven't conceded a lot of goals per match, they've still conceded in most of their matches. Tottenham have some potent attackers and will cause Liverpool some issues, there's no doubt about that. But the same does go for Liverpool, as Spurs' defence isn't much greater either, let's be real. It should be a very interesting match, as these two sides are in brilliant form and both playing some really good football as well. Ange ball versus Klopp ball. I will be there. And then we move on to the Sunday fixture and Nottingham Forest versus Brentford. Nottingham Forest host Brentford at the City Ground, as either side is looking to put a loss behind them. Forest expectedly lost to Man City, but not by as large of a margin as I was expecting, whereas Brentford suffered a shock loss to Everton in their own backyard no less, and in quite emphatic fashion too. Forest and Brentford sit with each other in the table, with Forest just a point ahead of the Bees, given they picked up one more win and one less draw than the London outfit. For once, Brentford are nursing more injuries than Forest, with some big players like Damsgaard, De Silva and Mee all set to miss out for this clash. Now some players could return, we don't know yet, but it's looking like at least 2 of those players we're missing out. Forest's injury front looks much better, with only Danilo and Hennessy the ones who are out for certain. I'm going to say a 2-1 win for Forest. I think Forest will keep all 3 points at the City ground. Brentford are without some of their biggest players, and if their previous matches are anything to go by, their defensive performances are suffering because of that. Forest on the other hand drew to Burnley, and despite losing to City, gave them a very tough match and showed a lot of prowess in that second half, as I mentioned. It'll be a very tough clash for both sides, and each team will aim to make it difficult for the other, but I can see the new style Forest are aiming to implement, paired with the City ground, just being the key factor in this clash, and should see all 3 points remaining in Nottingham. Somebody's just telling me, man, like, we need to get a win over these lot. They're just annoying. Can we please beat them? I know our record against Brentford isn't the best, but just grab the 3 points, lads. Please. And then move on to the Monday fixture of Fulham versus Chelsea. It's a West London derby as Fulham host Chelsea at Craven Cottage. Now, this is a derby that's classically been dominated by Chelsea, but for the first time in a while, it looks like a much more even clash, with Fulham arguably looking like the stronger side. Chelsea currently find themselves in 14th, and have been beset by a whole raft of injured and suspended players. I think they've got 3 players out through suspension and a whole load of them on injury, so it's not looking good, Brev. It's going to be very interesting to see how Poch lines up his side, as Chelsea's bench depth has noticeably declined as the injuries have piled up in the few matches we've seen this season. Fulham are nursing a few injuries themselves, but it's nowhere near the scale of Chelsea's injury woes. They've not been cooking. And they sound like 10 bajillion players, so I don't know how they don't have a strong bench, but here we are. I'm going to say 2-0 to Fulham. I am backing the Cottagers to win this derby. They've been in better form than Chelsea, and while that's not hard to beat, and taking injuries and suspensions into account, they have a better starting 11 too. Chelsea have been massively underperforming this season, especially with the amount of money they've spent on players, the players they bought in. But of course, the players will still be getting used to each other and getting used to the Pochettino style of play. Fulham are used to the way they play under Silva, and most of the players were there last season, so they already have a very good understanding of what type of football they're looking to play. So it should be a fairly assured win for the Craven Cottage Massive. Finally, the Tuesday fixture of Luton Town versus Burnley. It's a relegation 6-pointer as Luton host fellow promoted side Burnley at the Kenny. Things could look very different come kick-off with both teams playing at the weekend, but as things stand, both sides are searching for their first win of the season. This is the perfect opportunity for either side to do it as well. Luton have shown they're a better side playing at Kenilworth Road, and I reckon when they face a more equal side with the likes of Burnley or Sheffield United, it'll make for a very interesting match. Burnley have endeavoured to keep playing the way that bred success in the Championship, and so far that's not really worked out for them in the Premier League. But with the gap between the two divisions being so expansive, it will take time to adapt, and that honestly goes for both sides, to be fair. I'm going to say 1-0 to Luton. It may be a rogue shout, but I can see Luton claiming all 3 points. The Kenny is going to be massive for Luton this season, and they've played some solid football at home, and to be honest, I've been pleasantly surprised with the football I've seen them play, despite results. Burnley do play some good football as well, but with the amount of players they've bought in, it is taking time for them to gel. You can tell they're not that same quick attacking side they were in the Championship. Now obviously quality is different, but also the players don't have the same link they did last season. But there's just something telling me that Luton will claim all 3 points. I think that even despite league positions, it could be seen as quite the upset. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I think Luton can get something out of this match. Well, I think they can get more. I think they can get all 3 points. Come on, Luton. Prove me wrong. But yeah, I've been O2GT, and those have been my Game Week 7 Premier League predictions. If you have any of your own, please leave them down in the comments. I'd love to see what you guys are cooking up and see if your ball knowledge is as good as mine. Anyway, hope you have enjoyed. Please do leave a like, subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.